Hello, my name is Anjani Siegrist, and today I'm reading the astrology chart for Nikola Tesla. And this is basically, obviously, not for him, it's for me and for anybody else who's interested in this astrological information. The last couple of nights, I've had dreams with Nikola Tesla, which led me to this inquiry and wanting to just sort of see his chart in comparison with my chart, and see all the connections, conjunctions, oppositions, and squares. And so let's look at his chart, and I'm not going to read it the way I normally do for somebody who requested it, or for somebody who's alive who we can sort of peek into their personal dynamics. I'm more reading about his strategies, what I call strategies. Let's start off by looking at his Mercury. So the way that he perceives, so the part Mercury represents how we perceive, the way that we have our thinking function, cognition, and perception. So his natal Mercury is in the sign of Gemini, and his Mercury is trine to a bunch of things over here in Libra. So Mercury is in the sign of Gemini, and it has this connection to the South Node and to his Mars. The South Node connection with Mercury looks to me like a way of tapping in through the mental realms to his lineage, his ancestry, everything that has to do with patterns, I want to say karma, and also the roots, the DNA, the lineage. So being able to connect with that energy and bring it up into the body and have perception and cognition of that information. And then his natal Mercury is square to Neptune. So Neptune is where the piece where I'm connecting with him through dreams. Neptune is the part of us that is psychedelic. I call it psychedelic psychology. It's got this imaginal realm in visions and through imagery in dreams. Or we can take all those apart through imagery, through dreams, and through the part of you that's able to have that psychedelic connection to all things. I think it was Carl Jung who would call this realm the collective unconscious. But for me, at this point, it's more like the collective consciousness, that that field where everything is connected, and being able to tap into that field. This is a specialty in a way, because for this chart, Mercury is square to Neptune, saying that that dreamy realm is part of the communication. It's part of the way he's perceiving information, and part of the way that information is coming back out to us. So then the next thing I want to mention here is we covered Mercury going to Neptune at a square, which meaning, there's always, with squares, there's always a little bit of agitation, irritation. And that irritation causes us to either do something with it. So maybe, if I use my imagination, this could be something that's like gnawing, thoughts, so many things happening in the mental realm, and then having to work with that and being able to put it into something that makes sense. Then Mercury is at an easy aspect to what I was mentioning here with the South Node. The South Node is also next to Mars over here. So Mercury being at an easy aspect means that there is a sort of an easiness with connecting with that lineage and with the roots, and being able to bring that information up into the way that it's going to be expressed out. And that's also, his south node is conjunct to Mars. So this is the way that he's embodying his masculine energy, is through the so south node represents what we've already mastered, what we're good at. It represents the lineage and the roots, the DNA, the actual things that make up our physical body. So Mars being conjunct that says that, you know, his masculine, the way that he's expressing the God or the masculine energy, is combined with that innate roots, the innate lineage and DNA, being able to connect with the ancestral memories, his own memories, but also the memories of his own roots. So, excuse me, that was something that I was really looked interesting to me, because at first glance, looking at his chart, I was expecting to see some major Uranus connection or some major connection with Aquarius. None of the things that I expected to see were there at all. But when I started to look at all the aspects, then it starts to make sense to me more about the way that we are just now, and you know, maybe not just now, but it took a while for his information to really stick and to connect and make sense. And his name wasn't well known, and still there's a lot of people who are not aware of his work and what he did for our lives. And so he was born in, let's see, the 10th of July 1856 at midnight, or 12 a.m. on Thursday, the 10th of July. So a long time ago, and I bet you if I ask somebody about his name, they will think of the car first, the Tesla, which is really, and it's ironic. The next thing I'll mention here is Chiron, because he has some unique connections to Chiron. Chiron is known as the wounded healer. The way that I relate to Chiron is the alchemist. Chiron on the chart shows your sacred wound. Who was it? The crack is the place the light gets in. That was Leonard Cohen. The crack is the place the light gets in. What came through to me last year was that the wound is where your own magic seeps out, and you know, that place where your own beautiful juice of what you're bringing to this life is able to reach the light or God or the universe or that plasmic field that holds everything together. I call it love. So where yours is able to meet with the cosmic light and have that sort of being reflected back to you through the wound. So Chiron to me is the alchemist who is able to digest his own wounds, her own wounds, and make medicine with their own juice. So Chiron is in the 10th house on this chart in the sign of Aquarius. So if I were reading this chart for you, for instance, I might say something like asking about your sacred wound. In the 10th house, that wound might be on a relationship with the father or with the government. The 10th house has to do with the structure or form of the authority. So some wounding there. And then Aquarius, having the sign be Aquarius, is about cosmic consciousness, big picture perspective, this way of thinking that is so big that, you know, just like that. He had this bigger picture that people thought was crazy and it didn't make sense. And that could be a wound for somebody who has big innovative ideas and thoughts. And the connection that I have with him here is that his Chiron is exactly where my Venus is, on my midheaven. And this is oftentimes something that I feel as a wound, because I have these ideas that are like, if I could talk about it like it's just this one thing, except for that it it like layers out into this big huge thing that for me to distill that down to this one little thing is like the most painful thing for me. And I just wish, like, I have this stack of books right behind me. I wish I could know all of that information and explain it to everybody in a way that made sense in one sentence, and it's just impossible to do. So, and this little maybe 2 minutes that I'm talking about Aquarius with Chiron in Aquarius, probably so many people are just like, I mean, if you're watching my channel, maybe you have this too. So you're like, yes, I know what you mean, that I have this big cosmic view of the world. And it's so difficult to live with other people when you're just like, my mind is like this, and what are we going to talk about? you know so his wound, or his Chiron, is there. And then he has Chiron square to his rising sign, which gives me the impression that that part of him that is, well, I'll use these old terms, the wounded healer, or where the sacred wound is, connected to the rising sign. It's like the rising sign is what we're here to learn about. We're learning to master wherever the rising sign is. So part of his mastery level had to do with doing alchemy with that wound, and having that be something that was grounded into third, the dimension of embodiment. So he has Taurus rising, as I have Taurus rising. Different positioning though, because his Taurus rising is at 2 degrees of Taurus, conjunct to Pluto. So saying that he was here to learn about how to fully be in his physical body, and how to make embodiment, be a combination of that which Pluto represents, which is that the underworld, the underbelly, getting into that, the invisible, I usually would call this the elephant in the room. It's that heavy, dense energy that we can't quite name it, but we can feel it. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about the dreams I've been having lately, where he's showing me the magnetic field around things. So the first dream was the magnetic field around a bouquet of roses. And that was making the roses be eternal, that they would never die. They had their own force field around them that would keep them alive. And then last night, the dream was the heart, the magnetic field of the heart, and how that is eternal, and having that be something that sustains itself. Like the sun doesn't need anything else to illuminate it. It is its own illumination, just like the heart doesn't need anything else to sustain it, because it is that which sustains itself. So, okay. I think I'll go ahead and stop there, just because I am feeling super excited about this chart, and I'm not sure that anybody else will. Okay, one more thing. One more thing I'll mention here. So his sun is in the sign of Cancer, conjunct Venus. So Venus, as we know, is the goddess. It's the way that, looking at his chart, I would say that Venus is the way that he expresses feminine energy. His connection to the goddess is conjunct to his sun. The sun on the chart is, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, can be expressed through the sun. So the sun shines over everything on the chart, giving this overall style and flair. His sun is in Cancer, which is saying that his overall style and flair is, I don't really know much about his life personally. Like, I haven't read yet a sort of story of his life. So I don't know, but sun in Cancer would say something about nurturing, caring for the children, being a good father, a good, and not just of children or of children at all, but of a project. When you birth something, you either a child or a project, a garden, or energy projects in this case. seeing it through from the seed through its all of its stages, like nurturing that project from the planting, the birth, and through the life of that project. Sun in Cancer, the nurturer. Conjunct to Venus says that having the feminine being intertwined with the sun, the first thing that comes up is intuition, having a connection to, because being receptive, receiving, all of these things connect to Venus. And having that conjunct the sun kind of gives the overall style and flair from the inner goddess or from the goddess into everything that he does. Those two things, the sun and Venus, are trine or at an easy aspect to Neptune, which would say that the realm of dreams and visions, the psychedelic part of the mind that's able to go beyond what we think is normal. It's imaginal. That energy connects at an easy flow with the sun. So this just makes him more of a dreamy, visual, what do we call that? Visionary. So I'll just give another view of this chart. And thank you so much for watching the video. Please leave any comments. I don't expect that anybody really learned so much from this chart. I just had to get it out because I've had this chart in my database for at least 2 years, and every time I get kind of Tesla-y, I think, oh, I'm going to read that chart. And after this last few days, I've had a couple of dreams, so I'm finally reading it. So it's mostly for me to get this out of me because I'm super excited about it. And hopefully you got something, if nothing else, a little bit of entertainment from seeing me so excited. Another thing I'll just tell you, today somebody gave me this stack of books. Stacks. That's a stack. There's this other stack, and there's more. It's all books on Tantra, and I am ecstatic. I've had a wonderful day. Somebody from Sweden bought a handmade mala from me. I've been reading astrology all day for people who've ordered personal astrology readings, and I am sharing my joy through this video. So thank you so much for following my channel and being interested in my work, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.